So you can kick up into a handstand. Maybe you're starting to get some consistent longer holds. Maybe you're starting to play around with different shapes. Maybe you're even starting to learn a handstand press, but something feels off. In your kick-ups, maybe you're feeling your lower back arching or your rib cage is flaring, or maybe you've started doing some handstand press drills and you're having trouble getting into that position to work on that much needed scapular elevation, and you've realized overhead mobility is an issue, and that's why you've clicked on this video. So today I'm going to show you my favorite drills for overhead mobility. These aren't complicated. You can do them in your warm-up, you can add them into your cool down, or you can even do them while watching TV. Let's get into it. So the first exercise that we're going to go over is the external rotation lift-offs. And I wanted to start off with external rotation because in order to get to here and to make that feel comfortable, we first need to be able to get to here and make this feel really comfortable. You're going to need a block and a weight. Doesn't have to be too heavy, nice and light. That way you're going to get minimal compensations. If you're doing this at home, you can easily use something like a thick book. If you're at a gym that doesn't have a block, you can also just use a weight plate. And for the weight, if you are at home, you can just use something like a drink bottle, fill it up with some water. To set up this exercise, you're going to be lying face down on the floor. You're going to put your elbow in line with your shoulder so that your arm is at a 90-degree angle, and you're going to pop the elbow on top of the block. What you're really learning when you're doing this drill is how to properly isolate the back of your shoulder to really get into the external rotation so that we can get as minimal compensations as possible. When you're doing drills like this where you're trying to increase your range of motion, other muscles are going to want to compensate. So we just want to make sure that our mind to muscle connection is really focused on the back of the shoulder. What I'm going to do to help with that is to be in this prone position here, and I'm going to think about keeping my glutes tucked under my pelvis, and I'm going to let my head rest on the opposite hand. From here, I want to think about the back of the shoulder opening up. So without the weight, it's going to look like this. Tiny little movement. If you find this already hard, you don't need to add the weight. You can simply start with body weight first. But if that's feeling good, you can then add a weight as well. So if I were doing this weighted, I'd have that arm at that 90-degree angle. Keep the glutes tucked. I'm going to point my toes as well just to get a bit of tension in my quads and my legs too. And then from there, I'm going to think about the back of the shoulder externally rotating and opening up through that movement. I think the most common compensation that you want to look out for when you're doing this movement is the wrist joint. So what that's going to look like is if I was doing the movement, you can sort of see that my wrist is trying to crank upwards, and that's your body trying to use the wrist joint to get you more range of motion, but really it's no longer your external rotators, right? How I like to program this movement is by doing reps with an isometric hold at the top. So for example, I might do 3 reps with a 5-second hold. So that would look like this. I'm going to open up, and I'm going to hold for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then I'll rest, and then I'll go again. Using just the back of the shoulder, I'm still squeezing everything else tight. I'm going to lift for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The reason why I like to do those timed reps is that it just gives you the mental capacity to really focus on your entire body within those 5 seconds. So in those 5 seconds, I'm just thinking about moving the shoulder. I'm trying to strengthen my ability to hone in on just the shoulder. And I'm also giving myself a bit of time to realize if I'm doing any compensations. So for example, with the wrist joint, if I'm here and I'm counting to 5 and I can feel that wrist starting to flick back, I can just return it and then think more about that shoulder. So the time reps just gives you a bit more time to be able to get your technique right. With the time reps, there are different ways to program this. So if you have trouble doing that, or you feel like it's quite hard to do, you can start off with some low reps and also just a low time period, just so that you can get into that feeling of understanding how to even connect to those muscles in the first place. And then as you get stronger and better, you could actually go for, again, some lower reps and an even longer time period. So for example, 10 seconds, because then you get a chance to really explore your range of motion within that 10 seconds and to almost think about being able to generate even more tension as you do the movement. The next exercise I want to go over are Serratus uppercuts. And the serratus are these little muscles underneath our rib cage. And the reason why I wanted to include a strengthening exercise in what is a
mobility video is that having a strong serratus gives us a better foundation to build our pushing and our pulling strength. And at the end of the day, a handstand is a vertical pushing exercise. For this exercise, you're going to need a band, and you can use a long band like this or a mini band. The block is optional, so if you're doing this at home, don't stress if you don't have one, but again, you could use a book as well. The block just gives us a tactile cue, which I'll explain later. You can do these either standing or seated. I prefer seated just because there are less things to focus on that way. And if you're using a block, the reason why I like it is because it just gives you a tactile cue to squeeze your elbows in. Again, if you don't have a block, that's fine. It's just something that you're going to have to think about a little bit more to keep squeezing the elbows in and to push your forearms out. If you're using a mini band, you're just gonna pop it around your forearms like this and to push against it. If you are using a long band, what you're going to do is pop the block in between your elbows, hold on to the band in an underhand grip like this, and you're going to squeeze the block with the elbows. If you're using a long band, if you hold it out further, it's going to be easier. If you hold it closer with a narrow grip, it's gonna be a lot harder just because there's more tension on the band.
So you can start easy and then look to challenge yourself from there.
We're going to put our elbows onto the block. I'm going to pull this band apart. From here, I'm going to think about an uppercut, which is essentially a sort of swooping motion. I'm not a boxer, please don't judge that description. The arms are going to stay at that same angle, and I'm just gonna move through the shoulders to make this movement happen. So I'm moving my shoulders upwards, and I'm still squeezing the block and pulling the band out tight, and then I'm coming back down in that same swooping motion. So notice how the elbows stay at the same angle. The only thing that is moving is the shoulder joint. So we're going to move on from that external rotation, and now we're actually going to put our hands up above our head, and we're going to do that through the passive shoulder opener. There are different levels to this, so we're going to go over them. For the first level, you could use 2 steps, 2 yoga blocks, 2 books, or even just 2 thick weight plates. And when we get into this position, I want you, if you're familiar with yoga at all, not to think about this as a child's pose, but rather to think about this as more of a puppy pose, for this level anyway. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to place my hands on our steps. I'm going to sit back, and if this is my normal child's pose here, I'm actually going to just arch through the lower back. In this particular level, I'm going to emphasize the arching of the back, but you'll notice that in the next level I show you, we're actually going to discourage that arching. But for now, it's okay if you feel like you're actively extending through your lumbar. So you're going to pop both your hands onto the block, and then from here, just bring your knees back, and you're going to think about getting your chest to the floor and your head through your shoulders. So the reason why I'm not too fussed on the arching of the lower back is if I force you to get into this position, it doesn't give you that much range to be able to poke your head through your arms or to get your chest to the floor. And this is all about getting as much shoulder flexion as possible. So allow that arch to happen and then just relax into the position. This shouldn't be painful. Of course, it's gonna be some kind of uncomfortable because you're trying to get more range, but think about trying to kind of relax into the movement and just let the shoulders open up. You can do this for time, or if you're having trouble relaxing into the position, you can actually just do it for breaths instead. So for example, you could do 8 breaths, long and relaxed. So, and just thinking with each breath, trying to get the chest just that little bit closer to the floor or your head closer through your shoulders. Now, if that exercise is starting to feel good and you're starting to need more range than what the blocks can give you, the next level is to elevate. So at your gym, you can use a bench, you can use a box. If you're at home, you can use your bed or a chair or a couch, just something that's kind of wide enough for you to put your hands on. And we're gonna set up in the same way, but as mentioned earlier, we're now going to focus on a bit more of a pelvic tuck. This way we can just better isolate our shoulder flexion without getting compensations. So I'm going to place my hands onto the box and I'm going to move my knees back. Now let's go over this compensation. So if I do arch through the lower back, you can see that the range comes from that lower back extension and not from the shoulder flexion. So we do want to focus on trying to keep the spine neutral. You can even tuck the glutes in a little bit just to emphasize that a bit more. That one is up to you. So when I'm here, spine is neutral, and I want to think more about moving through my chest or moving my head through my shoulders to get this stretch. Of course, we do kind of want to make this a bit more relaxed, so you can just sort of, again, go back to that breathing to make this movement happen. There is a little bit more thought to this variation though, because of course, we're not trying to get into the lumbar. We still kind of need to focus and stay a little bit active with maintaining that neutral spine. We are now going to move into an extra level, which is a weighted shoulder opener. Again, you'll have
Your box, your bench, your couch, and a weight plate.
the easiest way to put a plate on, I find, is by putting it on behind you. And then from there, just hold on to the weight, shuffle back a little bit, and then carefully pop your hands onto the box. And same thing, I still want to keep my glutes slightly tucked, my spine neutral, and I'm still thinking about poking my head through my shoulders and just thinking about how it feels to open up through the upper back and the shoulders. The next exercise I want to show you is another variation of the lift-offs. So the lift-offs were the first exercise we did in external rotation, but now we're going to change it up a little bit and do lift-offs in full shoulder flexion. So we're going to find our prone position, that face down position here, and then we're going to go into full shoulder flexion here. Remember, when it comes to this exercise, we want to focus on just isolating through the shoulder, which means I'm going to think about tucking my glutes under, pointing my toes just to get a little bit more tension in the rest of the body, and I'm going to make sure that this elbow is straight. Okay, I'm gonna grip my weight tight, or my drink bottle if I'm at home, or actually you might not even need a weight because this is quite hard, so you could even just hold on to like a lacrosse ball, or you could ball up your hands into a fist. I'm going to think about even pressing down into the floor as I do this movement. So I press down into the floor with the rest of my body while the back of the shoulder goes into flexion to lift the weight off of the floor. As mentioned previously, you could do this for reps and time. So for example, 3 reps of 5 seconds, even 3 seconds because it is quite hard, or you could eventually program up to something like 1 rep for 10 seconds, just so you can really explore that shoulder flexion. Some common technique deviations or compensations that we want to look out for is again the wrist joint. So that would look like this, where we can see that wrist joint flicking upwards, or you might get a bit of rotation. So you'll kind of see or feel yourself lifting up, and then your body's rotating to try to get more range. So remember, try to be really intentional with this so that you can get the technique right and actually focus on just the shoulder, and that way you can actually improve that overhead mobility. The last exercise I want to show you is a specific handstand drill, and we are going to do a wall-assisted tuck hold. I do love a wall-assisted handstand drill just because I feel like it kind of jams you into position. And like previously mentioned with the Serratus uppercuts, it's all well and good to have the passive flexibility, but we do want to give ourselves a chance to get strong in that flexibility as well, which is why I also wanted to show you this drill. I will give a warning that this drill is quite demanding on the shoulders and the traps and the upper back. So if you don't yet have a comfortable 30-second nose to wall for sets, probably just stick to that first before moving on to this drill. And while you do get stronger at your nose to walls, you can do all those other drills that I've mentioned previously alongside that. And then you can add this one for when you're ready. So we're going to get up onto the wall. The closer you are, the harder it's going to be. So you can start a little bit further away, and we're going to think about pushing tall. So I'm going to push my shoulders up to my ears. I'm going to keep the elbows nice and straight, and then I'm going to tuck down while keeping the weight on my mid palm and fingertips. If this feels good, you can then go a bit closer, and then again, we're going to keep our shoulders aligned over the mid palm, and then I'm going to slide down while pushing tall. You'll notice the more you want to slide down, the more you're going to need to keep pushing tall, which is exactly why I like this drill, because it kind of forces you to go into that scapular elevation. I think in comparison to a nose to wall, the tuck hold kind of gives you a bit more tactile feedback to have to
push into that scapular elevation. So if you are doing the nose to wall, it's just something you're going to have to kind of be really mindful of on your own, that when you're in that nose to wall position, you still want to think about having to really push tall.
So there you have it. 5 drills to help you improve your overhead mobility and get that straighter handstand line and a nice mobile foundation to work on some harder handstand drills. You don't have to do all of these drills every time you want to work on your overhead mobility. You can just do a couple in one session and then save the others for another session in the week. The main thing is consistency. Try to keep what you choose in your routine for at least 4 weeks. This is going to give your body time to adapt to the stimulation that you're giving it. If it feels too hard to structure your handstand training alongside your mobility training, I have written up a comprehensive handstand guide that not only programs all the drills you need to get a longer handstand hold, but it also comes with a full upper body and a full lower body mobility program that is specifically designed to give you a easier kick up and a prettier handstand hold. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this whole video. So if you are keen on getting the guide, please use the code YouTube20 to get 20% off at checkout. I'll pop a link to the guide in the description below, or you can scan this QR code. I don't know where I'm putting it yet, but the QR code will take you directly to the guide as well. If you've got any questions, just pop them in the comments below, or you can let me know what handstand skills you're working on or what other calisthenic skills you might be having trouble with, and then I can keep making some helpful videos for you. And I will see you in the next video.